God, I'm giving you this, and God says, no, I don't have regard for your offer. Okay. Cain was angry, very angry, and this is what it says in verse 6. The Lord said to Cain, well, why are you angry, and why is your face falling? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And here it is. And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. I don't know if you've ever considered sin in this way. You see, before I really dug into this in preparation for this message tonight, I think I always put sin kind of on the shelf, like that thing that's up there. Sometimes you take it down and look at it, and sometimes, oh yeah, and sometimes we think about it in terms of like my personal sin, and oh, this is the thing I'm dealing with, and probably a little bit different from things you're dealing with. Oh, it's sin, and we talk about it. And sometimes, hey, what's your sin? Oh, well, I said, well, I don't really want to talk about it. This is a different type of sin, isn't it? A different description. Sin is crouching at the door. Sin is crouching. Sin crouches. Does that mean that sin also stands up and walks? Does that mean that sin moves around? I'm not sure, but God seems to think that we need to understand that sin has an effect. It has a momentum. It has a movement. It has a personality. Sin is crouching, and its desire is to take you. Its desire is for you. It wants you. That's a much different picture of sin, isn't it? It's scary. It's very scary. And I don't know why we haven't dug into this. I don't know why sin has always been kind of just a nice little thing we talk about that once was, and yet God, He seems to take a different angle on this. He says, sin is coming for you, and it wants you. But you must, it's a great word there, rule over it. You must come to a place where you are in control over it. If you're not in control over it, it will be in control over you. That's kind of scary. And it's kind of dangerous. And it's much different than anything I've ever really thought about. I think sometimes we can joke about sin. Sometimes we can. My pastor at church, he often asks people when they come forward to place membership at our church, and he says, okay, he brings the people up front, and he says, this is so-and-so. I believe a couple weeks ago it was my friend Jenna. She came up and she was excited. Now, he didn't ask her. He asked my wife and I when we place membership at the church, and I guess it's kind of maybe a preferential, person by person. He gets a person up there and he says, okay, now we're gonna need to know a little bit more about you. And so if you please, you're going to take the microphone and please share your 3 biggest sins with everyone here in the church. And it's always kind of exciting because sometimes people don't know that he's joking. And so they kind of gingerly grab the microphone and kind of pull it over and just about that moment there, so this one time he's like, just go right, that's fine. And so then I'm a little too animated. My wife and I stood up there. He says, Scott, we're going to need you to share your 3 biggest sins. I said, all right, let's do this. Because here it is. You want to know? Here's what happened. And my wife was like, stop it. Just settle down. Settle down. And sometimes I wonder if we were a little more honest with each other, if we recognize the power that sin has in our lives, the power that we sometimes allow it to have in our lives, if we recognize our desperate need to rule over it, as God has said here, to master it, to control it, if we recognize that it's a battle that often we cannot do it on our own. Sometimes we try and face our sin on our own. Sometimes we try and, I wonder sometimes if we had a time like that here tonight, if we all, let's just say for a moment, that this was the most confidential and just absolutely sealed, locked down place ever in your entire life. What you said here would never, ever, ever, ever get out. said it here, you walk through the doors and everybody would forget what you said. What if for a moment we could protect this time and we all paraded up here one at a time and said, hey, this is me and this is the sin in my life. This is what's going on. And then we hand off the microphone to the next person. This is me and this is, sin. I didn't realize it, but it was crouching at the door, and I opened the door. I didn't master over it. I let it master over. Here's what happened. Here's what happened in the past, or maybe even here's what's happening right now. It would be a little scary, wouldn't it? Some of you are thinking right now, is he actually? No, I'm not. But in sharing that, just that moment, I want us all to get to the place where, can you imagine what it would be like, though, if we did something like that? What kinds of things would happen in that moment? Yep, I opened the door, sin was crouching. I didn't recognize what was going to happen when I said yes to that thing, that person, when I said yes to that event, when I said yes to that movie, that magazine, when I said yes to that web page, when I said yes to that drink, when I said yes to that drug, when I said yes to that relationship, when I said yes to that person. I didn't realize it was crouching, and then it came in and it overtook me, and I'm still wrestling with it, and I'm still wrestling with the consequences of it, and it's trying to get me. Here's some of the things that I think could happen. I think all kinds of things could happen. I think some people would share, and some of us would go, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I mean, I thought you were a life group leader. You're dealing with that. Whoa. Somebody should tell the campus minister. And some of us might also go, oh my goodness, I can't believe what? Some of us might be filled with shock. Some of us might be filled with sadness. Some of us might be filled with empathy. Some of us might hear the stories of others walking up here and say, oh my gosh, me too. That happened to me. Or, oh my gosh, I did the same thing. In some ways, I think it would be very, I hesitate to use the word, but I've got it down here, so I'm going to, therapeutic a little bit. Oh my goodness, really? You let sin in and that's what happened? In some ways, it might cause us to recognize the reasons why people react a certain way. Well, that's why you always react that way when that thing comes on. When that person says, oh, I didn't reckon it all makes sense. That's why you act that way. That's why you are the way you are. Oh, could be helpful though. Sin, crouching at the door. Its desire is to overtake you. Its desire is for you. It's constantly against you, but you must rule over it. It wants you. And here's what it wants more than anything else. Would you turn with me to the book of Romans? So this is Bigfoot, New Testament. The book of Romans was written by a man named Paul. His Hebrew name that he was given, his name was Saul. We could read about his story really in Acts chapter 8, Acts chapter 9, and beyond. In Acts chapter 8, we would see that one of the first martyrs for Christendom, one of the first followers of Christ who was killed in the name of Christ because of Christ, his name was Stephen. He was taken outside the city. He was stoned, and the religious leaders, they didn't want to get blood on their cloaks, and so they laid their cloaks at the feet of a man named Saul. This is in Acts chapter 8. And then we find that in Acts chapter 9, this man named Saul, he goes to the religious leaders in Jerusalem, and he says, I am going to hunt down every single person who calls themselves a follower of the way, a follower of Jesus. I am going to hunt them down, and I will either bring them back if I can. If I can't bring them back, I'll kill them. That's fine. We'll just snuff this thing out. I'm going to Damascus. Can I get some letters? And the religious leader said, go for it. You're a one-man machine. He was single-handedly trying to take down the church. And in a moment, Jesus single-handedly took him down. And in Acts chapter 9, we see that Saul has this moment on the road. This light shines down from heaven. And he has a one-on-one encounter with Jesus, and Jesus says, "You belong to me." At the same time, Jesus is having a conversation with a man named Ananias, who later goes and prays over Saul, and Saul later becomes Paul. One of the things I thought that was interesting, though, and this is just a side note before we get into Romans, Ananias says to the Lord, he says, "Don't you know about this man? Haven't you heard about this man? I know what this man does. Like, this man has done everything to kill your people." And God simply says to Ananias, I am going to show Saul, I'm going to show Paul how much he must suffer for my name's sake. He's going to do what I need him to do. He's going to take this message out. And after that moment, Saul is baptized, he becomes Paul, he takes this message. I mean, this is like a 180. This is completely leaving the killing Christian's life and now declaring that Jesus is it life. That's quite a conversion. We don't see that or hear that very often anymore. He completely turns around and he spends the rest of his life trying to convince everyone he can. Trying to convince everyone he can about who Jesus is. And about how to be connected with Jesus. One of the greatest places that we can find out about this power of sin and what sin does is from the book of Romans. So Romans chapter 1. We are going to fly through a couple of passages. I have a short video for us to watch by a man named John Piper, who I think wraps up this little section really well. And then I have a few questions for us to consider as we think about what sin does specifically in this area of filtering and separating us and isolating us. So this is where it goes. And so Paul, writing this letter to the church in Rome, this is what he says in Romans chapter 1, starting verse 18. And notice that we don't see the word sin pointed out specifically here, but he constantly comes back to evil, and he constantly comes back to what is against God, and he constantly comes back to these ideas. And let me just fly through a couple of them here. In Romans chapter 1, verse 18, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness, all unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power, his divine nature, have been clearly seen, clearly perceived, ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. So men are without excuse. For although they knew God, they didn't honor him as God, they didn't give thanks to him as God." If we were to go down to verse 23, "They exchanged the glory of God, the glory of the immortal God, for images resembling mortal man, and birds and animals and creeping things." Verse 24, "Therefore God gave them up. He let them go in the lust of their hearts and impurity. He let them go to dishonor their bodies among themselves. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie. They worshiped the created things. They served the created things rather than the Creator. For this reason," verse 26, "God gave them up. He gave them up to dishonorable passions." And going down a little bit further, verse 28, "Since they didn't seem fit to acknowledge God, he gave them up to a debased mind. They did what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They were full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips and slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but they give approval to those who practice them." And here we have the most perfect description of sin that we possibly could. What is sin? Sin's only job is to separate us from God in any way, in any means possible. Sin's primary job in overtaking you is to get you to not see the truth about God, to not recognize his glory, to not thank him, to not worship him. Sin wants to take you to a place where you don't even need God. Sin wants you to worship everything else but God. Sin wants you to engage in your desires and passions and take them as far as you can and do whatever you want, as long as you don't acknowledge or think about or wonder about God. And where is God in the process? Sin, its desire is for you. I go back to that passage in Genesis because that word desire, we like to use that word in all kinds of things, romantic relationships. Sometimes we use the word desire in food and other stuff. I just have a desire, I need some, and whatever it is, fill in the blank. Some of you would say ice cream, some of you would say donuts, tacos, whatever. That's fine. I have a desire. In this case, though, I want you to think like sin, its desire, it wants all of you. Your entire life, every piece of you, and its desire is that you climb into bed with it. It wants you. And if you are so focused on sin, you won't be in the least bit interested in God. Though God's invisible attributes, what is known about God, it's plain. Because God has shown it to us. It's interesting, we in this culture, sometimes we get into these debates about what is right and wrong, what is good and bad, and that's fine, we can talk about all that stuff, but honestly, God seems to wrap it up pretty quickly here. He says, listen, take a look around you and recognize that there's something bigger out there than just you. And that is something that I don't care where you are on the side of, whether you believe in God, whether you're still trying to figure it out, whether you're kind of just, okay, I'm just going to kind of sit back and see what this is all about. Recognize that you didn't make the trees grow, you didn't make the lake, you didn't make the mountains, you certainly didn't have anything to do with the sun and the sky, the moon and the stars. You had nothing to do with that. There is something else going on. And God simply says, look, I made it pretty plain. You can look out and kind of see. And yet, sin desperately wants you to put the blinders on in that moment and say, don't worry about any of that stuff. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you. And it's scary. My friend John Piper, Allie, would you play that video? Because I think he wraps up this section really well.
We don't glorify Him. So is saying here is I believe what he is saying here is Romans 1:18. We suppress the truth about God and so fall short of it. Verse 21, we don't glorify Him or thank Him, so we come short of glorifying Him and thanking Him. Verse 23, we exchange the glory of God for images, so we come short of embracing the glory of God, and instead we embrace images. Verse 25, we exchange the truth about God for a lie, so we come short of embracing the truth, and we worship, and we stand in awe and serve the things that He's made, and so we come short of worshiping God. Verse 28, we disapprove of having God in our knowledge, so we come short of having God in our knowledge as the sun in our mental sky, holding all the planets in orbit. We're short of having God as our glory, God as our treasure, God as our all. That's the drift of the chapters. So my definition of sinning goes like this. Sinning is any feeling or thought or speech or action that comes from a heart that does not treasure God over all things. Sin, sins, actions called sins, are any thought, feeling, that come like fruit, or branch, shoot out of the root of the heart that prefers everything to God. A few years ago, I attempted to define sin, therefore, like this. And this is the root.
Sin is any feeling or thought or speech or action that comes, the fruit that comes from a heart that does not treasure God over all other things. A heart that prefers anything and everything else instead of God. The reason why I picked that just particular section and this, it's mind-blowing to think. I don't know about you, but I've often wrestled with the question, I made a decision to follow Jesus. Why isn't this life just a little bit easier? And I realize that there's some laziness in there. There's some other things that I just personally I got to work through. That's fine. And Paul later on in another letter, he says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. It's a day-by-day encounter. Jesus, he tells us to pick up our cross daily and follow him. And I often have thought, well, why isn't this a little bit easier? Like, why? I just kind of thought when I said yes to Jesus that a lot of these thoughts and temptations and desires would just kind of go away, right? And yet Genesis 4 and Paul also reminds me in Romans 1 that sin's desire, regardless if you have made a decision for Jesus, sin's desire is still for you. Sin still wants you to try and look at anything else except for God. Everything else except for God. John Piper, if we let the video go for another second there, he basically says that we separate from God in so many areas, and so that we find ourselves trying to connect with other things. And he points out a lot of things, and this might step on a few toes here tonight, and forgive me, but I feel like it's helpful to throw out a few practical examples. He says, why is it that we as a people can become so emotionally and morally indignant over poverty, exploitation, prejudice, abortion, infractions of religious liberty, manifold injustices against man, and yet we feel little or no remorse or outrage that God as a whole, in many areas of life and society, is disregarded, disbelieved, disobeyed, dishonored, and thus belittled by millions of people in the world. And the answer is sin, because sin, its desire is to grab your attention and pull you away from thinking about God. And we sit here tonight and you might still ask the question, well, Scott, didn't Jesus take care of all that on the cross? He did. You see, sin separates, Jesus connects. Sin, its only desire is to separate you. Okay, that was 30 minutes. Give me just 3 minutes to wrap up, okay? That's why I do a timer, okay? Getting a little too excited here. Sin, its only desire is to grab your attention. Every thought, every feeling, every action, every impulse, every desire, it wants you to be separated from God. And here's the sad part. Here's the part that just breaks my heart. Paul, when he writes in Romans, he says that though we know God's righteous decrees, and we look at people who practice all kinds of these things, that our sin is separating us from God, and we look at other people and we say, whoa, that's a little far out there. We not only do them, maybe not exactly the same way, but kind of in our own way, but we give hearty approval to those who practice those things. What what does this look like practically? Well, hey, did you see that new show? Which one? Oh, you know that one. Oh, you mean that one? Yeah. For me, recently I've been watching through a Netflix show, Black Mirror. There's a lot of cool things in that show. I'll tell you what's not cool about it, and this is one area that I've been convicted in after doing a little more study here. There's nothing God-honoring or God-glorifying in that show. The language that they use, the situations that they present, the situations between men and women, the sexual situations, there's nothing God-glorifying or God-honoring in that show. Well, hey, did you listen to that new artist? No, I did. Oh man, they're fantastic. Oh, great. I mean, they use 38 F words in each song. It's only 38 though. It's fine, okay? And it doesn't affect me. I just let it roll off me. Cool. All right. Is there anything God glorifying? Sure. Maybe. How's your relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend? Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. Oh, we're going to get married. Excellent. Way to go. We're sleeping together. We just wanted to try it out before we actually got married. We wanted to see if it would work. How's it working? It's fantastic. Okay. Wait, you're not married? No, but we're getting married, so don't worry about it. Okay. Well, hey, did you go to that party the other night? Well, yeah, I went, but it was fine. It was fine. Well, what happened? I don't really remember because I got there and I just had one drink and then two, and I don't remember much after that. And okay, so those are the easy ones, right? And you're like, good. Way to go, Pastor Scott. Those are the easy ones. Those are the ones that everyone picks on. Okay. Hey, how's your thought life? You're driving down the road, you're thinking about that guy that just cut you off, and this is an easy example for me because it happens a lot, and I think wonderful things about that guy who just cut me off. Wonderful things. God glorifying things, not so much. Hey, did you speed on the way up here? Well, speed. Come on, Scott, just speed. It's just okay, cool. Is that God glorifying? Are you honoring God by following the laws? Whatever, it's fine, right? It's just a little speeding. It's not a big. Hey, can you pull up your online checking account? I just want to see kind of where you're spending your money. Hey, settle down there, Pastor Scott. Knock it off. You can't do that. Okay, cool. But if we went down through your list of items, like, are those glorifying God? Well, yeah, they're totally glorifying God. God expects me to go to McDonald's twice a day, every day, okay? He said he would provide. And he has provided in the way that, Scott, I didn't use all my student loan money, I got a little bit of extra, okay? That's fine, right? Oh, I'm stepping on toes. I know I'm stepping on toes. Are you glorifying God in every area, every thought, every action, every feeling, every emotion, Well, what the mess? How am I supposed to do that? Like, are you kidding me? That's like everything, Scott. That's everything. You can't just expect me to everything, right? Everything. Glorify God and all and everything. And if we were to go to Romans chapter 7, Paul, he lays out this one. He says, listen, there's things that I know I should do, but I don't do them. There's other things I know I shouldn't do, but I do it. And he goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he's like, and it's just a wrestling with sin. It's a wrestling with sin. It's a wrestling with sin. And this is how he ends in Romans chapter 7, verse 24. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? Here's the phrase, thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. Sin's greatest desire is that you would be separated from God, and that everything in your life would point you away from God, and that everything in your life would cause you to hide And everything in your life would cause you to isolate, and everything in your life would cause you to throw a filter over your life so that nobody actually sees what's going on. That's what sin wants from you. Its desire is to take you. And as my friend Matt Shantz, he said this once, and I appreciate that. He said it might be a little loose. He said it might not, theologically it's not like, super like in stone. He says, but think of it this way. If you spend your entire life on this earth saying to God, I really don't want to glorify you, honor you, think of you, thank you. I kind of don't really want you. Then what the mess do you think is going to happen on the day of your death as you are facing eternity? Do you think that God's absolutely going to say, well, hey, you didn't want anything to do with me for your entire life, so come on home? Sometimes he does, and I'm not God. And praise God that I'm not God, because that just, But do you think that if we said no to God our entire life, that he's going to say, well, yeah, absolutely, I want, Well, he already showed us in Romans 1 that we said we didn't want him, we didn't want to worship him, and here's the scariest part there. He says he gave them up, he gave them over. He said, you want to do what you want to do, go do what you want to do. But thanks be to God, Jesus Christ our Lord. Jesus came to reconnect us to him. A little bit later on tonight, you're going to go into your community groups, your small groups, and there's some questions there written in your little booklet. And one of the questions that I wrote specifically, and it's so uncomfortable, you're welcome. And so here's what it is. One of the questions is, what are ways that you consciously try and hide your sin from other people? And then I write in there, share one of those ways out loud with your group. Do you know why? Because God did not design you to face sin and face this life on your own. He designed for us to do this in community. He designed for us to walk alongside each other and go, hey, wait a minute, that's not cool. Wait, you do that to hide you? So seriously, every time when I text you, you don't text me back, that's what's going on? Oh, that's ridiculous. I'm coming to your house next time. He designed us to live in community. He designed us to help each other. He designed us to remind each other. He designed us that we would constantly point each other back to God, because sin is constantly trying to point us away. Would you pray with me? Father God, we cannot fathom life without you, yet many times we live our lives like we don't want anything to do with you. And Lord, sometimes that's laziness, sometimes it's silliness, but often we can recognize that most times it's sin. And the sin's desire is to grab our attention, our everything, and pull us away from you. And God, I pray that you would come alongside us gently tonight. I pray, Holy Spirit, that you would be doing the work in our hearts tonight, convicting of sin, pointing out truth, guiding us back to you, because we can't do this on our own, and you didn't expect us to. Lord, we need your help tonight. And we need your help in pointing out the ways that we try and hide from you and hide from each other. And we need your help tonight in recognizing the power of sin, but we also need your help tonight because you have told us that we must master it. God, we need your help to master the sin in our lives, to put it in its rightful place. And God, we can do that by partnering with you. God, we love you and we thank you for your love and your grace for us, and we thank you for your Son Jesus, and we thank you, Holy Spirit, for the power that you have in our lives to walk it out day by day by day. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, so we're going to transition into some community group time. So if you don't know what community groups are, they're kind of like small groups. So here is how you figure out what your community group is. There's kind of fun instructions for you. So right after this, when I say go, but I didn't say go yet, not that go either. So this is how you assemble your group. You're going to find one buddy from your campus. Got that? Great. And then I want you to find 2 other pairs of buddies not from your campus. So it might be like 3 different campuses. That would be fun. It might be like a group with someone from Central and someone from Western. That'd be crazy. Don't worry, you'll be able to pray for each other. So once you have your group of 6 people, you'll just go somewhere. There's no like designated location because that's the fun part about community is that you get to figure things out together, right? All right, so once you find your 6 people, there are questions on page 5 of your little bulletin that you have. But I also have a couple like icebreaker questions because I do realize that you're probably not going to know these people. So you might want to start off saying like, hey, my name is, and then tell them the name that's on your name tag. Unless you go by something different, I suppose. So yeah, start with your name. And then, after that, I want you to tell them your 3 biggest sins. Okay? Some of you are listening. I'm just kidding, don't do that. What I want you to do, okay, so you're going to describe your favorite activity that you do outside of school. Because some of you enjoy studying way too much, but that's not an activity. That's not a hobby. That's a requirement. All right. Then I want you to share something maybe that's stressing you out this semester. Like, oh, that's scary. But share it. It'll be great. This is how we build community. And then the next thing is maybe just share a high point that you've had about this year so far. So that might be the school year that started in August or maybe January. We're 32 days into it, so that's exciting. All right, so you have those questions. You have questions on page 5. After community groups, at 10:45, you can go over to the cafeteria and the dining hall. You can have pizza, but don't show up there. Yes, pizza. This is exciting. I love this excitement. 10:45, pizza. But don't go any earlier, please, because they're expecting us at 10:45, not at time. So, if you are an international student, we're going to have one big community group. So if when everyone goes and finds their buddies, if you just want to go to the back right here, wow, it's just 3 people.